This is the last week on spreadsheets, and today's lesson is looking at user experience, so creating features such as buttons or links that will make the spreadsheet better for the person using the spreadsheet. So before we progress, let's look at our knowledge recall, and you have a few questions here. You're going to need to pause the video and answer these questions in your ePortfolio. So what V helps us make sure we do not make mistakes when entering data. We did this in our spreadsheet when we use the drop down boxes. So what do we call that, beginning with a V? And what feature allows cells to change depending on the data in them? And again, we've done that in our spreadsheet, that when we enter the data something might change, and we had an advice section that changed colour and changed the writing in there. So what feature is that? And from your eSafety, who should you report online concerns to? And then from your introduction to computers, when you're sending an email, what does the BCC stand for? So pause the video and answer those questions. Okay, from last lesson we've created our spreadsheet, we've created a graph, and if you're in Excel you might have created a spin button, but this is difficult to do in Google Sheets. So I just want to show you two different versions. We have here a version created in Google Sheets, and here is the one created in Microsoft Excel. So they look pretty similar, but there are a few subtle differences. The drop down boxes, for one, I quite like the feature in Google Sheets how the drop down box is inside the cell, and that works like this. And in Microsoft Excel the drop down box appears just on the side, so it does look slightly different, but they pretty much operate and work in the same way. So let's move on. From our last lesson we've created comments and a drop down validation, and we hid the cells so they couldn't be seen for our drop down validation. So that was all hidden. There was different ways we hid that data, and if you're working in Excel you might have made a spin button, but that's an extension task, so don't worry if you haven't done that. Obviously we made the graph last week, and it's nice to have the graph, but we don't always want the graph on our page, so I might want to move this. And what I can do here is I'm just going to make a new tab at the bottom by clicking the add. So I've created a new tab. I've still got all my data in the first tab, and I've called that data. My second tab, I can right click and I can rename. I'm going to rename that as chart. So go back to my data. When I hover onto my graph or my chart and choose the three dots in the top right corner, I can make a copy of this chart. So I've now copied my chart. I go onto my chart page and I can just right click paste, or Control and V to paste. So this information is my chart for that data. Now I can see in my chart that on a Monday there was a lot of social media time, so 7 hours of social media. So if I go back to my data and just change my data and just bring that down to a 0, you can see that my chart on the right here, my original chart, was here, and it changes when my data changes. I'm actually just going to delete this chart because I don't want it on there, and I'm going to go back to my chart data, and we can see that my chart is now here, showing the data from the table in a chart form. So that's exactly there. Let's just go back, change that back to 7, and we'll see that that line in the chart goes back up here. So that was one way that we can make our data look better. I know last week we just hid our data here, make it white, so that wasn't visible either. So that's what we've got there. We've created a way of moving our chart over. We might want to just recolor that chart, the tab at the bottom. I'm just going to right click on there, and I've got change color, so it stands out a little bit. I'm going to make that red, and it gets a little red line underneath, so we can see that now that it's slightly different. Again, I can color my data, so change colour. I'm going to make my data blue, just so I can differentiate between the two tabs at the bottom and make them stand out a little bit more. So I can just change between one sheet and another. So in Google Sheets it's called a sheet, in Excel it's called a tab. Same thing. The next stage we're going to look at. So we've created a tab. Oh.
So here's our spreadsheet.
There is a video in the PowerPoint you can watch in Excel how to do that. With a hyperlink button, now this is where it differs between Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets. So we can make a button to get to our extra tabs at the bottom. And I'm going to just demonstrate that in Sheets. So what I'm going to do is create a link from this tab for data that will take me to charts. So from my data tab, I'm just going to write go to charts. And I find it's easier if I just scroll down a little bit, and I can right click on the go to charts, and I'm going to insert a link. And I'm going to a sheet in this spreadsheet, so I can just click this little box here, and I can choose my sheet at the bottom, which is charts, and click apply. So now you can see the underline there. When I click on that, I can choose charts, and it takes me straight to my charts page. So that is the hyperlink from this to my second page. If you are working in Excel, I'm just going to demonstrate this now, and those in Google Sheets get an understanding of what cell protection is. So here's my spreadsheet. I'm just going to select all the cells I want people to edit. It's these ones here. These are the ones people are going to fill in. And I can just click or right click on Format Cells. And then I've got a button on the right hand side, a tab on the right hand side called Protection. I'm just going to unlock these cells. So I'm going to untick the locked ones so they're no longer locked, and click OK. I'm actually going to do the same for this cell here in M4. So right click, Format Cells, Protection. I'm going to unlock that. So now these cells here and this cell here are unlocked, but I can still type everywhere and click everywhere or delete data. So what I need to do is just go up to my Review tab at the top in Excel and click Protect Sheet, and now I can allow all users this worksheet to, I'm just going to untick the one there so it's only select unlocked cells and click OK. So now you'll notice that I can click anywhere and I cannot delete any of the data. The only place I can actually click is the cells that I want to operate, the cells at the top here, or my recommended hours per day I can change. But the graph I cannot delete, my data here I cannot delete, and so on. So my sheet is now protected. So that, I'm just going to unprotect my sheet so I can now carry on working on my sheet. But that is protection. So in Google Sheets I can protect my cells. I'm going to select a range of cells, and I can right click and there's protect range, and I can give a description to my protect range in here. So I'm going to just call it protect not protect, because I want people to click those cells, and that cell range is already selected because I selected that first. And I'm going to set some permissions, and then we can see whoever shared this document. So this is to do with the computer science teachers across the trust, and I can say who can edit that. So I'm going to untick everyone. Now what it does in Google Sheets, the creator of that sheet, they leave. It's still here, so I can still edit that, but nobody else would be able to edit that sheet at all. So I can click done. So now when that's shared with other people, nobody can change any of the data apart from the cells that I've unprotected. So that was cell protection. Remember that you're going to need to add your evidence to your ePortfolio and submit that to your teacher. If you've done this in Microsoft Excel, you need to save your work as you've progressed. So thinking about what we've achieved, We've now created the tabs at the bottom. We've created a hyperlink, either text or a button, depending on what software you've done it in. And we've protected cells, especially if you've done it in Microsoft Excel. So you need to remember to submit your work to your teacher, put your spreadsheet into your ePortfolio and explain it, and then make sure your teacher has your work so they can give you feedback.